and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, today we are going to be, as we celebrate our Independence Day, we are going to also be looking at one area where we need also to be independent and Atmanirbhar. That is really the key word of this government. I'm talking about our data and digital colonization. There is a fear that we are not in control of our own data, but it's in the hands of foreign companies, either based in the US or in across Europe, that where our data is stored, our personal information is being given out for commercial purposes. We are not in control of our own information at the end of the day. Unlike, say China has done it very effectively, and so has Russia. So what can India do to be in control of our own personal data? Joining me for this conversation and also to explain the topic better, we have Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya. He is the president at the Center of Digital Economy Policy Research. We have Srijan Pal Singh. He's the founder of the Kalam Center. He's also an entrepreneur and a well-known author. And PKD Nambiar, he's a commentator, columnist, and he's done a lot of work, taken up the issue of digital colonization. PKD, can you begin with since today we actually also meeting at your initiative, why this imperative need and for digital colonization? Why is India lagging behind?
Well, Priya, if you really recall that all this, the colony, the word itself was quite new to India just maybe 200 years back. So when the people like Britishers, French, Dutch, all these people, they went for an expedition from the point of view of looking for a business, or it was never an idea for them to make a colony, but it was predominantly for looking for spices or some kind of a material, or from there onwards to make it as a business and finally a colony. And there is no better country than India, which actually gone through the challenges of a colony. And even today, as we speak, we still have that left, some amount of that left behind of this colonization we had to go through. So today what we are looking at, it is like the large amount of data. If the last century, if the oil was the biggest wealth, today the data is the biggest wealth of the world. But then 140 crore people, maybe with one of the largest penetration of mobile phony and the 5G spectrum which we are rolling out, and etc. That I think the Indians as our data are not at all safe, at least not in our custody. Today's data is not limited to just an entry. So today I would rather call it like you have two persona today. One is that your physical being, and secondly is your digital being. And as a digital being, you don't even know what all information about you and me is available with the people who are not even a government. They are purely profit-making private companies which are located in elsewhere. So in other words, they are in a position today to control our political lineages, political thought process, our societal ideology and value system, our personal data to an extent that what is that we need to buy, what should be the one which should drive our thought process and the times to come. So to an extent, they have infiltrated in each one of us to an extent wherein they are in a situation today, they can even topple a government. In other words, I would say like a Facebook or a WhatsApp could be a country on its own, may not be physically being. So that is the kind of a danger we are living in. And I think, as you initially said, that the Prime Minister has taken up a great initiative of Atmanirbharta, wherein we are looking at the China and Taiwan conflict is going on, and the Middle East from the last couple of decades, there has been conflict. We are looking at the Russia and Ukraine war. So it is important for an economy or a large population like us, the data should be sovereign, and that should be within our country. We should not let a private or a motivated, profitable multinational companies to hold on to our both physical. I mean, data is now digital. So predominantly digital and becoming more and more digital. So I think the freedom and the independence what we require today is not only just the physical independence, also a digital independence, wherein we should become a digital Atmanirbhar country.
Well said. But Jadid, what is the stumbling blocks? And can you explain, exactly the digital economy, versus digital imperialism? Why, we are not being able to? Of course, the large cost is one.
So, digital and data are a small part of what digital colonization is, which is a term I coined way back in 2005. And that was and that was based on the definition of colonization that had come out with, which is essentially having disproportionate economic benefit through either changing the rules of engagement or through deceit or through outright military control, right? And therefore, what we have seen continuously is that that the international trade rules are changed in order to be able to extract disproportionate economic benefit with narratives such as technology has to come from the West, and raw materials has to come from the East, and labor has to come from the East, and so on and so forth. These are obviously false narratives to continue to push for a regime which should have been long outdated. You will see the concepts of patenting and IPR were being pushed very vigorously from 1960s onwards. Professors from US and elsewhere were exported to various universities across the world, including the IITs in India and so on and so forth, to teach what is IPR. You will find that 1960s is an interesting time when last of the colonies went out, which is why I chose the word digital colonization. After writing a whole bunch of papers and peer-reviewed publications, I was accused of being jingoistic, which is why I termed the coin technological sovereignty, which is why you see the word colonization and sovereignty are two sides of the same coin. The challenge when we narrow it down to just data is that very quickly we believe that keeping data within the country gives us full protection. It is almost like saying you got all the Harappan scripts. Please go ahead and read it. It is of no value. So just having the script or the data within the country is of no value unless you have got control over it, which is the sovereignty part of it. Also, what is it that we are really losing? Is it really a jingoistic term that we are saying that we want all our data, we want it under control? It's not jingoism, it's straight and economic implication. We lose jobs, we lose control over the way we live and the way we do business when we start losing data and as a consequence, technology also. If we want to create AI, which is clearly a tool which will transform the world, anybody who controls artificial intelligence will control the world. And artificial intelligence will be based on data. If we lose out that data, we will not have control over the next generation of technologies, and therefore will continue to be subservient to other countries and to other companies. In fact, what you will see has been happening for millennia is that it's not countries who are dominating, it's corporates who are dominating. It is businesses who are dominating. And therefore, you will see that Chettiars dominated entire Southeast Asia, right? So it was the business community was dominating, and the political patronage came subsequently. So it is very critical that we focus on the control of data, wherein the sovereignty part starts coming in. And it's challenging because, look, we do need the services, right? Every time you open up Google Maps, you need that mapping service, but you're also giving away data. You're also telling where there is a traffic jam happening, which is then used to give you back a service, but it is also being used to track how you operate, how you behave. And so in a way, it is a very a parasitic relationship that we have. And breaking that becomes difficult, which is where this whole vicious cycle steps in. The moment you give data, you are then subservient to the person whom you have given data. So you are forced to give more data. And to break that down needs subsequent, very, very significant political value.
Yeah, taking from his last point, Srijan, PKD also wrote in one of his columns that East India came to India as a trading company and not as a sovereign power that tried to colonize us. So all these social apps, microblogging sites seem very innocent, and that we are just giving away our position for traffic information. But we're also giving away a whole lot more. Are you worried about that? How worried should one be?
I think that's a very, very valid concern because we are giving data, that we know. What we also don't know, which is more worrying, is that we don't know what we are giving away. So if you open up your phone and you figure out a particular app, take any app, and look at the kind of access it has to maybe your phone, speakerphone, to your mic, to your camera, you don't even know. Most people do not even know how to turn it on and off. So you have become an innocent victim of this data surge which is happening. This data, as Jayajit was pointing out, is obviously relative, is important, has economic significance to it. But it's not just data, it's also algorithm. The real thing is what you do with that data, and that is algorithm. There are taxi apps which will will give you different prices for two people going from point A to point B at the exactly same time. These algorithms can create discriminations of its own kind. And it's important for a country, especially like India, which is a democracy. And we have seen how in the past, in the US presidential election, how social media companies were hand in glove in manipulating US presidential elections. So it's important for a democracy, especially like India, to ensure that not only we know what data is being taken away, who is giving, where is it going, but also what is being done with it, what is being done with the algorithm. And that's where I think we have a great silver lining, because we have a bunch of fantastic entrepreneurs, technical minds, and also people who can guide those technical minds, people like Mr. Nambiar and Dr. Bhattacharya. And they can build these enterprises with which we can challenge anywhere in the world. I mean, look at what happened when the Indian government banned the Chinese apps. And there were 100 or so apps which were banned. And in no time were we able to create replacements for those apps. And those replacement apps which were indigenous got a lot of funding, which was a great news. The same thing happened, in the case of, say, example, a social media platform like Coup or something which is challenging, even outside India, even in Nigeria, it is challenging the likes of Facebook and Twitter. So you have to trust the Indian young mind. The same IITs, the same engineering colleges, the same MBA colleges can produce replacements for all these foreign products which are there. Otherwise, there will be a time when we will face the brunt of it. We saw policies like the PRISM of the US government, which all major data companies, mobile manufacturers denied existed for a very long time, where the NSA, the National Security Agency of the US government, was taking data from all over the world. So anyone's data, your or mine data, without informing you. It was happening for years. We saw the US Patriot Act, which was reenacted several times, which gave the US government the sweeping power to ask for any data of anyone, anywhere in the world, as long as it was held by a US company. So you see, the thing is that if a company holds the data, ultimately, wherever that company belongs to, that government will also have authority over that data. And that's why it's important to have data within our shores and also have the algorithm within our shores and the companies who do this within our shores. So that's also an opportunity. I think it's $1 billion opportunity. Today, last year's app business was $133 billion across the world. Now, that's a business which I think India should look at.
We definitely have the minds for that. But there is a fair PKT that, for instance, one of the options is that we develop our own, like Coup and other alternatives. The second is, as he's saying, invite foreign, say Facebook and other to store their data here. But then they would be subject to our laws and our taxations. And that's a big fear also from foreign companies to, because our laws are not steady or stable.
Just to give you an example, because I think what Jajidya said, that it is not just limited to the social media when it comes to data. For an example, RBI has clearly said that all the financial data should be, including the credit card information, should be within our country. And for you must be knowing that American Express has denied. They said that they will not put the data in Indian shore. So what happens? That RBI has told them not to add new customers. So it's a story which is, now you understand the power of the data, the value of that data. If an international company who is doing business in my country and storing the data of you and me and every kind of data, it's not about just what is your liking, what is your disliking, what is your mood, and what is your political lineage, and to an extent that where are you going and what are you doing, what kind of a coffee you are drinking, this much of data, and what is your choice of food, choice of dress. Everything is being available, as what Srijanji said. So now, what is the issue? Why our governments have not been able to create an alternate platform for Indian shore, wherein our data, as Srijanji said, our algorithms can be managed within our shore? Are we not capable enough? Are we not the people who would, most of these large companies which we are talking about, these social media companies, are headed by maybe Indians, and most of the major brains behind those companies are Indians, but why not? Then there is some kind of an issue. For an example, they were just talking about Coup. You will find that despite the fact that maybe an application like that would give either equal or even better performances. But still, there is a reluctance from not just from the public in general, even from the top bosses or the people who are ruling this country. I'm not talking about a particular party. They also have a resistance to get in to an application and promote it. So on the one side, we talk about Atmanirbharta, and we are sitting in a, I would call it more of like in the peak of a crisis, and it can explode anytime. It can even help, as I said, a societal behavior can be controlled today with by these social media giants, because they know what is happening. So we have even seen in the last decade, most of the, I mean, today, for an example, as we speak, in Manipur, the internet connection had to be closed. Why? The reason being, there is a riot taking place there, and they feel that these social media can play a role in making it go haywire. So the idea is that if you have the data with you, as Srijanji said, that the algorithms are within our control, and if we promote the indigenous apps and companies to do well, rather than just treating them like as a second-class citizen, I think we should promote all our Indian applications and motivate them to make a digital independence. I think on the 75th independence, as we celebrate, the time has come for us to become independent even digitally, because that is going to be the real wealth of India. If we are not controlling it now, then the wealth will be
break and come back and talk about some of the issues that you've raised in your conversation, but after a quick break. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here discussing data colonization, and is it now time to be Atmanirbhar as to how we control and store our data? But Jaydeep, I am a bit worried about this control. Even if we give it within our shores, that doesn't mean it's that we are safe and secure, because the control, is it going to be with private companies? Then the Indian big tech will then commercialize it and use it for the ends. Will it be in hands of a government? Government is never, it's always partisan. This government or the other government will use it for their own ends. So at the end of the day, we are being controlled by someone or the other. It's just that, do we want to be controlled by someone in India or someone outside India?
So the belief is that the control will be by the rule of law. It cannot be the rule of a company or a rule of one individual or a political party, but rule of law. If the rule of law fails, that means the political system in the country has failed. So that is the area which is beyond my expertise. So I'll limit it to the point that when we are saying control, we are saying control of the rule of law. For example, what PKT was mentioning about data being mandated to be stored locally by RBI, that is because these financial companies were not sharing data with the police as and when needed. Now, the police has its role. It may be misused and so on and so forth. That's not the realm that I would like to get into, because that's a failure of governance. We're not talking about failed governance. We're talking about the way government has been architected. So the police is supposed to protect the citizens. And if there is a fraud that has happened, or there is money laundering that has happened, then the police has the right to know from where the money came and where it went. For example, there was a case where money to the tune of almost $1 million was put in to promote anti-India sentiments on a popular social media platform. And despite repeated requests from the police, it was not revealed as to which account in Canada from where that money came in, right? And therefore, and the excuse given was that was by the company that is owned in US and not by the Indian entity, and therefore they cannot share the data. Therefore, these regulations have been made so that we as citizens can be protected by our government. Similarly, if we have data which is perhaps owned by social media companies and not by, let's say, financial companies, and then this data has law and order implications, for example, riots happening, as PKT mentioned, then it is the duty of the law enforcement agencies in this country to find out from where the source of mischievous posts came in. And therefore, having not just control over data, but also the way of life, the culture, and so on and so forth becomes important, because we need to protect the way we live, our culture, and so on and so forth. For example, how many of these social media platforms actually support local languages? If Nagamishi, Idumishi, these languages are not being supported, they are dead. If the language is dead, the culture is dead. I think Ku is one of the shining examples that both Srijan and PKT took, which is actually working towards promoting local cultures, be it in India, be it Nigeria, be it wherever they're going. And I think we need more such entities like Ku, which is able to protect not just data, which is just the foundation, but also the culture, the way of life, the way we interact, the way we talk. All of that needs to be protected. And if we don't have that replicated on a digital platform, then these cultures, languages, and everything that goes with it are dead.
You want to come in on the dangers that are there, not just in terms of the economy, but in terms of there is a social political aspect also to it.
Yeah, so that's true. I mean, we have seen that social media or data in general can be used to manipulate public opinion. That is, I don't think we need further debate on that because that is a well-known fact. It has had consequences. That is also not something which is up for question. The answer to that is pretty clear. These things will have a far more ramification on a country which is democratic and multicultural like ours. I think we are a country and a society which should be more careful about who we hand over the remote control of our data and social media than any other country in the world, because we are not homogeneous. As Jayajit was pointing, different languages are there, different religions are there, and that's our strength. But that strength needs to be protected by ensuring that the data which we share is not used to exploit our diversity itself. I want to also revisit the previous question which you had asked in terms of the danger of indigenizing data and data centers and what would happen if the government gets the control. Well, let's be honest, that is a concern. That's a very valid concern. In fact, when I was working advising the JPC in the Parliament of India, which made the PDP bill, this was a concern which was across the board. But let's understand this. Government is what you choose. You choose a government. 5 years, the government goes into ballots. You don't like it, you remove it. The second thing is the government comes under a framework. There are things like RTI. If the government misuses data, the citizen can ask for information under the right to information. How will you go?
Not all governments. This government has not been very forthcoming with RTI. So
well, the RTI
that's my worry, no?
Try doing that with the US government. Ask them, did they share your under the Patriot Act, did they share your data or not? You'll get nothing.
But use an RTI as a means. That's why I pointed out that it's a very thin means. It's at the whim of the government if it wants to share or not.
Well, you have a state in Goa where RTI has created a lot of havoc against someone in the government. So RTI can be quite a powerful tool as well. Again, not getting into the merit or demerit of RTI, but the thing is that at least your government is under some control, which you have. Somebody will own the data, whether it's a company or your government or both. You can create a framework within your own constitutional framework where you can control the companies, where you can control the government in whatever form to whatever extent you can. It is still better than handing it over to a foreign company under a foreign government's act over which you have no democratic or legal control. So that is something that's where I think entities like Ku or entities which are competing against, say, TikTok and so on are extremely important, because I'm still assured that if something goes wrong, at least I can take them to the court of law within my own country's framework. So that is very, very important. The other thing is, again, answering the question which you were asking and something which you have very validly established, is that it's not just about data, it's also about what companies are doing with the data. See, because in a democratic process, the thing is that social media and algorithms move so fast that by the time you catch what's happening, the election has already been influenced and the results are already out. And we have seen that happening in US, right? So if US could not do it, imagine that how difficult it will be for anyone else to do it. And now you have countries which are, not very friendly to us, and some of them are our adversaries, which have a concerted effort to do exactly this. So this digital dominance of a democratic process is something which we are seeing happening as almost like an industry. The industry is running on exactly this. So that's why it's important all the more to understand this whole architecture, as Jayajit was saying. There are several things, several theories around it, there are several ramifications around it, to understand that in totality. And I think that discussion has to begin. And this is Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. I think the real Amrit is data. I need to do something about it.
Thank you all for a very important conversation. And I do suspect this will not be the last of such conversations. For there is a global standoff between as to who gets to store your data, with India, Indonesia, and other countries also making a very strong case against US and Europe. And also, let's not forget, this is the 75th year of our independence. So why not time for digital Atmanirbharta also? That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching this show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.